Hello, this video is an introduction to Zotero online reference managing tool. By the end of this video, you will be able to understand what Zotero is and what it does, download and configure Zotero, create, add and organize references, add or edit citations in your work, and create a bibliography. You use it to organize all the different research sources that you use in your work, whether it's an essay, an FYP, a thesis or dissertation. You put them all in one place into Zotero, and then when you have them organized in Zotero, you can then use Zotero to add or edit citations from those sources in your work, and also to create a bibliography for your work. So to download Zotero, we go to zotero.org, which brings us to this page. In the center of the page, you will see a red button for download. Click on that, and you'll see here two options. The one we want for now is the option on the left, Zotero 9 for Windows. It has identified the type of machine I am using. However, if you have a different operating system or a different type of machine, you can see there are other options available here, such as for Mac, older versions of Windows, and indeed iOS and Android. So with Zotero downloaded, this is what it looks like. You should be presented with a screen for settings, but if you're not, you can go to Edit, Settings, and you can see here there are a number of options on the left. The first and one of the most important options here is Sync, and this basically makes sure that when you use Zotero on more than one device, it will update your Zotero library across all the devices that you use. Make sure syncing is switched on. There are various options here. Just tick them and make sure that they're all set. The next setting we should consider configuring is Cite. So we'll click on that. And you can see here, this allows you to choose your default reference style. For most TOOS users, the correct style to choose here is Cite Them Right 12th edition, author date, Harvard, as seen here in blue. You may need to use a different reference style. If you're not sure which referencing style to use, you can ask your lecturer or your course coordinator. We'll scroll down here, some more options. Citation options, include URLs, we'll include that. And then down here, word processors. Again, this is quite important. Microsoft Word. Now, this is what most people will use when they're formatting documents or when they're working on projects. You can see here it says reinstall Microsoft Word add-in. That's because I already have it installed. For you, starting from scratch, it will present an option here like this to install Microsoft Word add-in, and do install that. Now that we've successfully downloaded and configured Zotero, we need to get it ready in order to start adding references to it. And to do that, we'll go here to the top left to My Library. We'll right click on that and we'll click on New Collection. And we'll give this a name. For example, imagine I'm doing an FYP. So we'll call this one FYP. And we'll hit Create Collection. Now we have a place where we can add the different sources that we're going to use while we create our FYP. We can also add sub-collections to these collections that we've created. So for example, if we click on FYP and go New Sub-Collection, this basically creates a subfolder, and as you might do, creating an FYP with several chapters, we'll give this one the name Chapter 1 and create, and we'll add another Chapter 2, and so on. You can give them any name you like, but it is advisable to do this before you start so that you have all your references organized in a place where you can very easily find them and then add them into your work. So let's, for example, imagine we're going to add a book that we're going to use for Chapter 1 of our FYP that we found, and we want to reference that book. We need to add it to Zotero. There are a number of ways we can add resources to Zotero. The most basic way is to add one manually. So I'm going to go here to Chapter 1, and I'm going to click here at the top for this icon, New Item, and click on the drop-down arrow. And various options are presented here. The most common ones are at the top, beginning with Book. So we'll select Book. And this gives us a number of fields here on the right that we can use to add in the book. Many of these fields are optional, but at a bare minimum, we want the title of the book, the author's name, the place of publication, the publisher, and the year. So let's put in our book here. Let's just call it History of Tipperary. The author name, which is last name, first name. So I'll put in my name, Dooley Joe. You can see Zotero has put in the comma for us. The edition, we'll say second, if it has an edition. Place, we'll say Thurles. Publisher, we'll say Island Press. And the date, we'll say 2026. Another easier way to add a reference or resource to Zotero is to use an identifier like an ISBN or a DOI. So here is a book on the catalog that we'd like to use. And you can see it has an ISBN. It has a 13-digit ISBN, and to the right, a 10-digit ISBN. But we'll copy the 13-digit ISBN here. We'll go to Zotero. We will click on this little icon here that says Add Items by Identifier, which is a little magic wand. And you can see it presents us with a box where we can type in or paste in the ISBN, which we'll paste in now. And we'll click Enter. And Zotero has now gone and identified and found this book for us. And you can see here on the right, it's completed all the fields that we had to do manually. Another very convenient way to add references or resources to Zotero is to use a cite or export function built into some of the library databases. This database is called JSTOR, and you can see here on the right it has some options. One of them says cite. We'll click on that, and you can see here it's actually presented us with a number of pre-made citations that we could use, but none of them are in Harvard, which is what we want to use, or Cite Them Right Harvard. So you can see here down near the bottom, export a RIS file, and you can see it says for EndNote, Zotero, or Mendeley. So we'll click on that. It's asking us here, do we want to import this item? We'll go OK. We'll go back to Zotero, and you can see here we are in chapter 1, and it has now added that in for us. A final method to add a reference to Zotero is to use the Zotero connector plugin. You can see here, this is a newspaper article, again relating to Tipperary history. We'll go up here to our toolbar to where we have Zotero connector, and you can see there, save to Zotero. We'll click on that. We'll go back to Zotero, and you can see there it has added it for us. One thing to remember here is you notice that it has left author blank. And this is something we need to watch out for when we're using Zotero connector, or indeed referencing any resource that is online. So we'll just go back to that web page very briefly, and you can see here there actually is an author. It's Owen Kelleher. We'll go back to Zotero, and very simply where it says author, again, Kelleher Owen. Final feature of Zotero worth mentioning is that it can be used collaboratively by multiple users at the same time, for example, as part of a project. You can see here on the left, I have a what's called group library setup, and I've called it team project number 1. We can set up a new one, and to do that, I'll go here to File, New Library, New Group. This will present us here with an option to give this group a name. We'll call this team project number 2. We have options for the type of group we want it to be, public and open, public and closed, or private. I'd like this to be private, just between my classmates, so I'm going to go choose private membership. We'll create that group. And again, there's more options here. Private, any group member can read it, any group member can edit, and we're happy with that. We'll go to member settings. You can see I am a member. I'm the owner of this group, and I can now invite my classmates or friends to this group if I click send more invitations, and I can just type in their 2 usernames here. or their K numbers, their email addresses, and then click invite, and then they will receive an invite, and that will add them to this group. And if we go back to Zotero, you can see here group project number 1 now appears as a separate library to my own library here. And I can now add resources to this, and the other members of my group can also add resources and references to this and make changes to it as they see fit. Here is a sample text that we're now going to use to demonstrate how to insert citations using the Zotero extension for Microsoft Word. To do that, we'll go here to our text where we want the first citation to appear at the end of this sentence. We're going to give it a little space, and we're going then here to the toolbar where it says Zotero. We'll click on that, and we'll go to the button that says Add Edit Citation. We'll click on that. Now we can search for the resource or item that we want to cite. In this case, it's a book by an author called Rees-Mogg. So I'm going to type in either his name or the name of the book. So first of all, we'll try his name, or EES. And you can see straight away it has found that particular resource, which I will now click on. And I'll go to the little accept button here on the right and click on that. And now it has inserted the citation in the correct Harvard format for us into our text. Now let's say we want to edit this citation to include a page number. For example, you might do this if you were quoting directly from a book. To do that, we'll click where we've inserted the citation here. Again, we'll go back to Add Edit Citation at the top left. And using the drop-down arrow beside the reference, we'll click on that and enter here the page number, which is page 22. And click Done. And again, click the Accept button. And it has now updated the reference, as you can see, to include the author, the year, and the page number in the correct Harvard format. Another common example is where you need to insert more than one reference. For example, if you're paraphrasing several authors at the same time. So again, in our text, we'll click where we want this reference to appear, in this case here. Again, we give a little space to allow room for the reference. We'll go to Add Edit Citation, and we'll type in the names of the various resources or authors that we want to cite here. So these are Liu, there's number 1, Schlichter, there's Schlichter there, and lastly Mankiw. Now I'm using the author's names, but you could also use the names of the books or the resources that they actually wrote. So in this instance, I could also type monetary policy, the name of this, and it will allow me to choose here from a list. Let's try this one. We've now entered all 3. We're happy with that. We'll click on Accept. And there are all the authors listed in the correct format using Zotero. We'll insert one more citation here, again at the end. And the same process. This one is by Huber. And it's from page 36 to 39. And we'll click on Done. And there is a reference for Huber, Robertson and Huber, 2000, pages 36 to 39. So with all our citations inserted successfully into the text and edited to how we want them to appear, we're now ready to add or edit a bibliography. And there are 2 ways to do this using Zotero, starting with the simplest, which is to go again here to our toolbar, over to Add Edit Bibliography. We'll click on that. We'll click here on the text where we want this to appear, which is here. And I'm actually going to type in bibliography like that. And I want it to appear underneath that. And then I will go Add Edit Bibliography. And lo and behold, it has entered a bibliography in the correct Harvard format with all the sources that I've used and cited listed here alphabetically at the end of our text. I can now edit this if I want to, For example, I might want to increase the font size to match the font size in the main body of our text. And I'll very simply highlight our bibliography. I'll go back to the ribbon at the top and go to the Home tab. And over here, I will adjust the font size so that it matches the text in the main body of our work, like so. I can also change the font used if necessary. That concludes our video on how to use Zotero Online Reference Managing Tool. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found it useful. There's a lot of information in that video, so if you need any further assistance, please do not hesitate to contact a member of library staff, or you can email us at library@tus.ie and someone will be glad to help.